If your ex is dismissive, then it can feel like they don't even care at all. But if you know anything about this kind of avoidance, then you know that it's really a mask to hide their deeper feelings. And the thing about hiding your feelings in this way is that the truth is always going to be plain as day to those people who know what to look for. So let's talk about how you can tell that your dismissive ex misses you, even if they won't admit it. I'm Brad Browning, author of the X Factor 2.0 and Breakup Coach here on YouTube for almost 15 years now. And what I've learned working with thousands of clients one-on-one is that you can group exes into different categories based on a few variables. Now, I know that your ex is a unique and special person, but they're still going to follow some pretty predictable patterns after the breakup, at least with a few exceptions. And that pattern is going to be based on their attachment style. And in your case, presumably, your ex is dismissive avoidant. And people with a dismissive avoidant attachment style tend to be self-reliant, independent, and they all struggle with emotional intimacy. So in relationships, they're going to avoid emotional closeness, and so they'll struggle with deep connection and commitment. And what sets dismissive avoidance apart is their dismissive attitudes, but in reality, this is really just another avoidance tactic. Say the two of you have been really connecting lately. You know, the relationship is firing on all cylinders. They're anticipating your needs and you feel just, great about how it's going. So you decide to try to tell them how much they mean to you. You look them in the eyes and share your feelings with them. And instead of agreeing and saying something nice back, a dismissive avoidant might try to deflect and say that they're nothing special. Or they might crack a joke or just change the subject. Essentially, they're dismissing your feelings because the vulnerability on display really makes them uncomfortable. And this dismissiveness can be felt really in all aspects of the relationship where intimacy and emotions are involved. Now, this is definitely going to make it difficult to judge their feelings after the breakup. But once you do know the 7 signs that your dismissive avoidant ex misses you, things are going to become a lot more clear. So let's dive in with sign number 1, which is they reach out, just not directly. Now, this is probably one of the more confusing signs because in classic dismissive avoidant fashion, they're not going to be straightforward and honest about it. So if your ex starts liking your photos, commenting on your social media posts, or messaging you something innocuous like, "What's up?" well, it's a good sign that they are trying to reconnect, but without putting themselves out there too much. It's a way for them to test the waters. They don't want to seem too eager, and they don't want to deal with the vulnerability that comes with a deeper connection. At least not yet. So here's a real-life example of what that might look like. Let's say you post a photo of your weekend getaway on Instagram, and your ex, who you haven't talked to in weeks, suddenly likes the post and leaves a comment like, "Looks like you had fun." This is, pretty casual, almost too casual, and that's the point. It's a way of them signaling that they're still following your life and care about what you're doing. And if you aren't interested in them, then they really don't risk too much emotionally, and so they're not going to be hurt if you just blow them off. And that's why they're very unlikely to send you a real heartfelt text like, "I miss you." But these indirect interactions, they still show you that they are still keeping tabs on you. And sign number 2 is they bring up old memories. So maybe you've noticed that your ex keeps talking about the good times you had together. They might mention a trip you took, a concert you went to, or a little inside joke you used to share. So maybe you run into your ex at a mutual friends gathering and they say something like, "Remember that road trip we took to the mountains? That was such a great time. I still think about it sometimes." And then they just change the subject. Now, this is actually a big deal because dismissive avoidants, they really tend to avoid talking about emotions, and they typically shut down conversations that get too personal. So when they start to recall fond memories from your time together, it's usually not by accident. They may not be able to admit that they miss you, but they can say it without actually saying it. Any kind of really nostalgic comment is a sign that they're not over the good times that you had together and that they still value the emotional connection that the two of you had. And sign number 3 is that they ask about your personal life. So if your ex starts asking questions like, "How's work going?" or "Are you dating anyone?" or even just, "What have you been up to lately?" That might feel like nothing, but this is actually a great sign that they miss you. This is their way of staying connected with you without having to open up emotionally. They want to make sure that you're doing okay, and they want to remind you that they're interested in what you're up to. Now, I do know that this is a really subtle one, so it might not mean too much. So do make sure that you're not taking this alone as a sign that your ex is, head over heels in love with you. But if it is happening a lot, or if it comes along with some of the other signs on this list, then this is just more evidence that your dismissive ex does miss you. Now, you kind of have to read the tea leaves with people like this because they're really never going to be straightforward when any kind of emotion is involved. And sign number 4 is they seem jealous or protective. Now, this one can be a bit tricky to spot, but it's definitely a strong indicator that your ex misses you. Even though dismissive avoidants typically try to keep their distance, if they see you moving on or talking to someone else, they can react with jealousy or possessiveness. They're probably not going to get angry or tell you off, but you might notice them acting a little bit defensive, perhaps asking more questions than usual about someone you're seeing, or maybe even making passive-aggressive comments like, I saw you were out with so-and-so last night. Are you dating now? And they might also just become short or cold with you if they do think that you're seeing somebody new. Now, they're probably going to try to mask their jealousy with sarcasm or humor, but underneath, they are definitely feeling something. And this reaction shows that they haven't lost their feelings for you. They're trying to protect themselves emotionally because they do still care enough to feel threatened by the idea of you moving on and being with somebody else. And sign number 5 is they engage in the classic push-pull dynamic. Now, this is something that many of you may have probably already recognized because it really is the hallmark of an avoidant ex. So your ex is going to be hot and cold with you, right? One minute, they're reaching out and they're being affectionate, and the next minute, they've gone quiet or they've disappeared entirely. So for example, they might text you late at night with something casual like, hey, what's up? And then when you respond, they go quiet for a few days or they don't respond back at all. And this back and forth behavior, it really is a classic sign of a dismissive avoidant. It's a way for them to keep the emotional distance that they crave while also getting a little bit of attention from you. Really, they're fighting themselves, trying to decide if they should tell you that they miss you and want you back, or just cut you off completely and never talk to you again. And of course, this cycle can be really frustrating because it leaves you wondering what they really want. But generally, this pattern is a sign that they do miss you and they're trying to figure out if they can safely open up again without feeling overwhelmed. If they didn't still care, they'd treat you normally or they'd simply stop reaching out. And sign number 6 is when they do little favors for you. Now, dismissive avoidants might not express their feelings verbally, but they often show you they care through their actions. So if your ex starts doing little things for you, like offering to help you with errands, lending you something you need, maybe giving you gifts, that is a sign that they do still have feelings for you. For instance, if you mention you're struggling to fix something around the house and your ex offers to come by and help, they're trying to show that they care without having to actually admit it. Now, these little gestures may seem small, but they're a form of an emotional bid. So that is, when your ex does something like this, they're really saying, please connect with me on an emotional level. Now, of course, they would never say that out loud. They'll only do it in a way that doesn't require any, vulnerability or risk. They want you to say thank you, give them a hug, maybe do them a favor in return. It's another attempt to get closer to you. And sign number 7 is they use jokes to hide their feelings. So like we talked about earlier, dismissives will use humor to try to deflect from real emotion because they find it threatening to be open and vulnerable. And that's why dismissive avoidance can often be quite funny because they're so used to using humor as a tactic. So don't be surprised if your ex jokes around with you a lot after the breakup. They may banter with you endlessly so that they can talk to you without ever having to get real about their feelings. And they might also make jokes about the breakup, about your relationship, their own feelings, whatever. But the point is that they're throwing a layer of humor over things to keep you at an emotional distance. So say they jokingly call you honey or use some other pet name that they used to use. And if you correct them, they can easily just say, I'm just kidding around, have a sense of humor, and thereby, deflect that rejection that they feel. It is pretty sneaky, but it's also very common. So there you guys have it, 7 signs that your dismissive avoidant ex might miss you and may want to reconnect. Now, if you're seeing these signs, it's a good indicator that they're not as indifferent as they might seem. However, do keep in mind that dismissive avoidance can be very guarded. So while these signs, can often point to lingering feelings, it doesn't always mean that they're actually ready to commit to you again. And of course, the more signs they show, the better your chances are. So do keep an eye on them for signs of their feelings. And if you want to truly understand your ex's feelings, please take my free quiz over at breakupbrad.com/quiz. It takes less than 5 minutes, and it's going to give you a much better sense of your ex's feelings than you have right now. Again, you can take that quiz for free right now at breakupbrad.com/quiz. Whatever you decide, the key takeaway here is that dismissive avoidants often act in ways that don't show their emotions clearly, and it can be confusing to figure out if they're really missing you or just trying to avoid facing their feelings. So if you're looking for more advice about dealing with an ex like this, please make sure you check out my other videos here on YouTube. And as always, don't forget to like this video, and if it helped, subscribe for more content as well. And now I would love to hear from you. Maybe you've seen some of these signs from your dismissive ex, If you have, leave a comment below and leave your questions there as well. I'll try to get back to you. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.